Please, I'm begging you. Don't shut me out. Just give me one more chance to make this right.
I watched my son sobbing on his knees in my study. 5 minutes earlier, he was laughing, thinking he'd scammed a senile old man. He forgot that before I was his father, I was a shark in the distressed assets world. It's Thanksgiving, and instead of turkey, I served him eviction papers. Most people see a 74-year-old man with a cane and assume he's an easy target. My son, Michael, made that fatal error. He saw a fading pensioner, not the predator who spent 40 years destroying weak businesses. He didn't realize I can smell rot a mile away. And 3 months ago, the rot smelled like family. If you love stories about cold-blooded revenge and financial justice, hit that subscribe button now. You won't want to miss the trap I set. It began on a Tuesday. I was reading on my porch when the bank called. A polite woman asked for Mr. Vincent Moretti regarding a missed payment on a home equity line of credit. "Miss," I said, gripping the phone, "my house is paid off. I have no loans." "I'm looking at the documents, sir. A $300,000 line of credit, secured against your home, signed 3 months ago." A cold, familiar focus washed over me. The clarity of combat. "Email me the copy," I ordered. 10 minutes later, I stared at the PDF. My name, my address, and a signature that was almost mine. It was a good forgery, but he missed the arthritis tremor in the V. It was the steady hand of a young man. I didn't need a detective. Only 3 people had access to my deed: my lawyer, my accountant, and Michael. My lawyer is wealthy. My accountant is timid. That left Michael, my 40-year-old son who still chased easy money. I sat in silence. Most fathers would be heartbroken, looking for excuses to forgive. I just felt insulted. He didn't just steal, he underestimated me. He risked the home where his mother died to fund his gambling. I reached for the phone, but not for the police. That would be too easy. If I sent him to jail, he'd play the victim. I needed total leverage. I dialed my contact at the bank's corporate division. "Robert," I said, "it's Vincent. Don't flag that loan as fraud yet. I want to buy the debt." The game was on. Robert sat across from me in his glass-walled office, looking pale. He pushed the loan file toward me as if it were a bomb. We had done business for 30 years, but he had never seen me like this. I wasn't the friendly retiree he saw at charity galas anymore. I was the asset shark again. "Vincent," Robert said quietly, "this is clear fraud. The signature is forged, but the notary stamp is real. Michael probably paid someone off. We can have the police pick him up within the hour. Why do you want to buy this toxic debt?" "Because prison is too good for him," I replied, putting on my reading glasses. "I want to own the problem. Prepare the assignment papers. Transfer the note to my holding company, Red Oak Ventures. My name doesn't appear anywhere on the collection." Notices. Only the company name. I flipped through the loan agreement Michael had signed. He had been sloppy. He was so desperate to get the $300,000 that he didn't read the standard boilerplate text. My finger stopped on Clause 14, Cross-Collateralization and General Security Agreement. I almost laughed. In his rush, Michael had signed a document stating that if the primary collateral, my house, wasn't enough to cover a default, the lender had the right to seize any and all assets owned by the guarantor to satisfy the debt. Since he posed as the co-signer to get the loan approved quickly, He had inadvertently put his own house and his car on the line. "He didn't read the fine print," I muttered. "He rarely does," Robert noted. "Vincent, once you sign this, you are the lender. You have the power to foreclose. But are you sure? This is your son." "He made his choice when he stole my identity," I said, signing the check for the full amount. "Now, I'm just a businessman protecting an investment." The next day, I invited Michael to lunch. I needed to look him in the eye one last time to see if there was any remorse. Maybe, just maybe, he would confess. We met at a steakhouse. Michael arrived wearing a new Italian suit, checking his expensive watch every 2 minutes. He looked successful. He looked happy. "You're looking good, Dad," he said, ordering the most expensive bottle of wine on the menu without asking me. "How's the house? Keeping up with the repairs?" "It's fine," I said, sipping water, "though I've been thinking about finances lately. Money is a bit tight." I watched his eyes. A flicker of panic? No. It was amusement. He smirked. "Don't worry about money, Dad. You're sitting on a gold mine with that old place. Actually, I have a friend in real estate. Maybe it's time you sold it and moved into a smaller condo. Somewhere managed?" My blood ran cold. He wasn't just stealing the equity. He was planning to sell the house out from under me to cover his tracks before the loan matured. He wanted to put me in a nursing home so he could cash out. "I'm not going anywhere, Michael," I said softly. "Whatever you say, old man," he laughed, pouring himself more wine. "Just looking out for you." I paid the bill. He didn't even reach for his wallet. As I watched him drive away in his luxury SUV, any remaining doubt in my heart vanished. He wasn't a son anymore. He was a liability. And Red Oak Ventures was about to call in the debt. It was a waiting game now. I instructed my holding company, Red Oak Ventures, to stay silent for exactly 30 days. No phone calls, no warning letters. I wanted Michael to feel safe. I wanted him to spend every dime of that stolen money. If he had kept the cash, he might have been able to negotiate a way out later. But I knew my son. He couldn't keep money in his pocket any better than he could keep a secret. And spend he did. I watched his social media feed like a hawk. First, it was a weekend trip to Vegas with his friends. Then, photos of a massive renovation on his own backyard pool. He captioned the photo, "Living the Dream." He was burning through the $300,000 as if the well would never run dry. He had no idea that every dollar he spent was another nail in his financial coffin. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, he came over to check on me. In reality, he was sniffing around to see if I had noticed the missing equity yet. I sat in my armchair, intentionally wearing an old, stained sweater. I feigned confusion. I pretended to lose my glasses. I asked him 3 times how to use the TV remote. I played the part of the helpless, senile old man perfectly. "You really are slowing down, Pop," he said, leaning against the doorframe with a smirk. He didn't look concerned. He looked relieved. "Maybe we should talk about power of attorney soon, so I can help manage your bills. Make sure nobody takes advantage of you." It took every ounce of my self-control not to throw him out right then. The audacity was breathtaking. He wanted legal control over me to cover his theft permanently. He wanted to legally bury me while I was still breathing. "I'll think about it, Michael," I stammered, making my hand shake as I reached for my tea. "I'm just so tired lately." "Take your time," he said, patting my shoulder condescendingly. "I've got your back." He left whistling. He thought he had won. He thought the hard part was over. As soon as his car disappeared down the driveway, I dropped the act. I walked into my office and called my lawyer. "File the lis pendens on Michael's property," I ordered. A lis pendens is a notice of pending legal action. It's a silent killer in real estate. It doesn't kick you out of your house immediately, but it freezes your ability to sell or refinance the property. It alerts any potential buyer or lender that there is a claim on the house. I wasn't just going to take his money. I was ensuring that when the hammer dropped, he would have nowhere to run. He couldn't sell his house to pay me back. He couldn't refinance his car. The cage was locked, and the bird was still inside singing, completely unaware. Thanksgiving was 10 days away. That was the deadline. The day the first payment to Red Oak Ventures would be officially overdue, triggering the default clause. I looked at the calendar on my wall. I circled the date in red ink. It wasn't just a holiday anymore. It was Judgment Day. 2 days before Thanksgiving, the house was silent, but my mind was loud. I wasn't preparing a turkey. I had ordered catering. I couldn't be bothered with cooking when I had a much more important preparation to handle. I spent the morning in my study, organizing the dossier. Bank statements, the forged deed, the transfer of debt to my company, and the foreclosure notice. I arranged them perfectly inside a black leather binder. This would be the centerpiece of our holiday table. My phone rang. It was Michael. "Hey, Dad," he said, his voice booming with unwarranted confidence. "I'm just calling to confirm the time for Thursday. I've got a few other parties to hit, so I can't stay all night." 4 o'clock, Michael, I replied, keeping my voice frail and shaky, just like every year. "Right, 4. Listen, make sure you get that vintage Cabernet I like, the expensive one. I'm bringing a date, and I don't want her drinking that cheap stuff you usually buy." A date. He was bringing an audience. Perfect. "A date?" I asked. "Is this serious?" "You could say that," he laughed. "And Dad, I have some big news to share. My investments are really taking off. I might be looking at buying a vacation home soon. You know, maybe somewhere in Cabo." I gripped the edge of my desk until my knuckles turned white. He was talking about buying a vacation home with the money he stole from my primary residence. The delusion was total. He actually believed the lie he was living. "That sounds wonderful, son," I lied. "I can't wait to hear all about it." "Yeah, well, just have the wine ready. See you Thursday." He hung up without saying goodbye. I put the phone down and looked at the photo of my late wife on the desk. Michael had her eyes, but he had none of her heart. She would have been devastated to see what he had become, but she would have been even more devastated to see me homeless. I was doing this for both of us. I was protecting the legacy she helped build. I went to the liquor store that afternoon. I bought the expensive Cabernet he demanded, but I also bought a bottle of 25-year-old Scotch for myself. The wine was for his celebration. The Scotch was for me, to drink after I threw him out. I drove past his house on the way back. There was a brand new landscaping crew working on his lawn, planting expensive palm trees. He was digging himself deeper every single hour. He was improving a property that technically already belonged to me. I parked my car in the garage and sat there for a moment in the dark. The trap was set. The bait was taken. All that was left was for the rat to walk in. Thanksgiving Day arrived with gray skies, matching the mood inside my house perfectly. At exactly 3:55 p.m., the roar of an engine shook my front windows. It wasn't the sound of a family sedan. It was the aggressive growl of a sports car. I moved the curtain aside just an inch. A brand new black Porsche Cayenne Turbo pulled into my driveway. It gleamed even under the cloudy sky. It was a beautiful machine, worth at least $120,000. That was nearly half of the money he had stolen from me, sitting on 4 wheels. Michael stepped out, wearing a designer coat that probably cost more than my first car. He walked around to the passenger side and opened the door for a young woman. She was blonde, beautiful, and looked about half his age. This was the audience he had promised. I opened the front door before they could. Ring the bell, leaning heavily on my cane. "Dad!" Michael shouted, spreading his arms wide. "Happy Thanksgiving! Come here, you've got to see the new ride!" I shuffled out onto the porch, shivering slightly in the cold wind. "It's very big, Michael," I said, my voice quiet. "It's a beast, Dad. Top of the line. Leather interior, heated everything. 0 to 60 in under 4 seconds, he bragged, slapping the hood. "I told you business was booming. I decided to treat myself. Paid cash." "You didn't pay cash," I thought. "You paid with my home equity." "And this is Jessica," he said, gesturing to the woman. She smiled politely, but her eyes scanned my old house with a hint of judgment. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Moretti," she said. "Michael has told me so much about you." "I bet he has," I replied dryly. "Come inside. It's freezing out here." As we walked into the hallway, Michael immediately took charge. He didn't act like a guest. He acted like he already owned the place. He critiqued the temperature, complained that the lighting was too dim, and made a joke about the old people smell. "We really need to modernize this place for you, Dad," he said, hanging his coat on the rack. "Get some smart home tech in here. Jessica's apartment is fully voice-activated. You're living in the Stone Age." "I manage," I muttered, leading them to the dining room. The table was set perfectly. Fine china, crystal glasses, and the black leather binder sitting inconspicuously on the sideboard, right next to the wine decanter. "Wow, you went all out," Jessica said, looking at the table. "Only the best for family," Michael grinned, pulling out a chair for her. He looked at me, his eyes gleaming with greed. "So, Dad, before we eat, did you think about that power of attorney? I really think we should get the paperwork started next week." He couldn't even wait for the appetizers. He was starving, but not for turkey. "Let's eat first, Michael," I said, taking my seat at the head of the table. "We have plenty to discuss later." The turkey was dry, but the conversation was even harder to swallow. Michael poured himself a third glass of the $200 Cabernet I had bought, swirling it around like he was a sommelier. He dominated the room, his voice loud and booming, barely letting Jessica or me get a word in. "You see, Jessica," he said, gesturing with a forkful of stuffing. "Dad comes from a different generation. They believed in working hard, saving pennies, stuffing cash under the mattress. It's cute, really. But today, it's about leverage. It's about using other people's money to build wealth." I slowly cut a piece of meat. "Is that so?" I asked innocently. "And whose money are you using, Michael?" He choked slightly on his wine, but recovered quickly. "It's a figure of speech, Dad. Investors, partners. That's how the big boys play." He turned his attention back to the house. He looked around the dining room, scanning the crown molding and the vintage chandelier. It wasn't a look of nostalgia. It was the look of an appraiser. "This place has good bones," he told Jessica, "but the layout is terrible. Once Dad moves to the assisted living facility, I'm going to gut this floor. Open concept kitchen, knock down that wall. We could flip this place for $1 million, easy." My hand tightened around my steak knife. "Assisted living?" I asked, keeping my voice level. I didn't know I was moving. "We're just planning ahead, Pop," he said dismissively. "You can't live here alone forever. It's dangerous. What if you fall?" Jessica and I were looking at a place comfortably close to us. It's nice. They have bingo, nurses on staff. It's for your own good. Jessica looked uncomfortable. "Michael, maybe we shouldn't talk about this during dinner." Nonsense, Michael interrupted. Dad knows I'm pragmatic. The equity in this house is sitting dead. It's useless. I can put that money to work. I can triple it in a year. He was already spending the inheritance he thought he was about to steal. He didn't just want the $300,000 he had already taken. He wanted the whole pie. To the future, Michael said, raising his glass for a toast. To growth, and to family taking care of family. I raised my glass of water. To consequences, I said softly. What was that? He asked, not quite hearing me. I said, to consequences, I repeated, louder this time. Because in business, Michael, every action has a reaction, and every debt must be paid. He laughed, clinking his glass against mine. You're getting philosophical in your old age, Dad. I like it. He drained his glass. He had no idea that the reaction was sitting 5 feet away on the sideboard. Actually, I said, placing my napkin on the table, speaking of business, I have a little something for you too, a gift. Michael's eyes lit up. He probably thought it was a check. Really? You didn't have to, he grinned. Oh, I insisted, I said, standing up slowly. Why don't we go to my study? It's private. Babe, give us a minute, okay? Michael said to Jessica, winking at her. Dad and I have some boring financial stuff to sort out. Go check out the TV in the living room. He walked into my study like he was the CEO entering a boardroom. He shut the door, cutting off the noise of the house, and sat down in the guest chair opposite my heavy mahogany desk. This was the same chair where I used to dismantle competitors back in the day. It was uncomfortable by design. I walked behind my desk and sat down slowly. The leather creaked. For a moment, I didn't say anything. I just stared at him. The silence stretched out, heavy and suffocating. Michael shifted in his seat, his smile faltering just a fraction. So, he said, rubbing his hands together, what's the big surprise? You mentioned a gift. Did you finally decide to liquidate some stocks? Or maybe that check for the new venture we talked about? I didn't smile. I didn't blink. I reached into the drawer and pulled out the black leather binder. I placed it on the desk and slid it across the polished wood until it stopped right in front of him. Open it, I said. My voice was no longer the shaky old man's voice I had used for months. It was clear, deep, and cold. Michael looked at the binder, then at me. He looked confused by the sudden change in my tone. He reached out and flipped the cover open. The first page wasn't a check. It was a copy of the loan agreement from First National Bank. The loan for $300,000. The loan he had forged my name on. He froze. His face went pale, draining of all color instantly. He stared at the paper as if it were a ghost. I don't understand, he stammered, his eyes darting around the room. What is this? Why do you have this? Keep reading, I commanded. He turned the page with a trembling hand. The next document was a notice of assignment. It stated clearly that the debt had been sold by First National Bank to a private holding company, Red Oak Ventures. Red Oak Ventures? He read aloud, his voice cracking. Who are they? Dad, someone is scamming you. This looks like a loan, but I swear I didn't. Stop, I said. One word, sharp as a whip. He shut his mouth. Red Oak Ventures is me, I said, leaning forward. It's my holding company. I bought the debt, Michael. I bought the loan you took out in my name. He laughed nervously, a high-pitched, desperate sound. Dad, come on. You think I did this? This is identity theft. Someone must have hacked my... I have the surveillance footage from the notary's office, I lied. I didn't actually have it, but I knew he wouldn't call my bluff. I have the bank records showing the transfer to your account, and I have the silence of the police. For now. Michael slumped back in the chair. The arrogance was gone. The mask of the successful businessman had shattered. Now he was just a scared child caught with his hand in the jar. But he still didn't understand the gravity of the situation. He thought this was just a scolding. "Okay," he exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "Okay, look, I was in a tight spot, a temporary cash flow issue. I was going to pay it back next month. I swear, I just needed a bridge loan. Don't make a big deal out of this, Dad. We're family." "Family," I repeated, tasting the word like sour milk. "You put my house at risk. You stole from me." "It was an investment," he shouted, trying to regain control. "I was doing it for us. Look, I'll pay you back. Just give me a few months. Tear up these papers and we'll pretend it never happened." I shook my head slowly. "It's too late for that, Michael. Look at the last page." He flipped to the final page. His eyes scanned the dense legal text, looking for a loophole, looking for anything that would make sense to him. I saw the exact moment his heart stopped. His finger paused on clause 14. He squinted, trying to process the legal jargon. "Clause 14, I said, my voice filling the silent room. "Do you know what cross-collateralization means, Michael?" He looked up, sweat beading on his forehead. "No. I mean, it's just standard bank stuff, right?" "Not exactly," I replied, leaning back. "You see, when you forged my signature, you were in a rush. You needed that money fast. So, to bypass the extended credit checks, you listed yourself as a guarantor. You co-signed the loan to push it through." "So what?" he snapped, his voice rising in panic. "So I'm a guarantor. I told you, I'll pay it back." "Read the highlighted section," I pointed. He read it. I watched his lips move silently. "Lender reserves the right to seize any and all assets held by the guarantor to satisfy the debt obligations." The color drained from his face completely. He dropped the binder on the desk as if it were burning his hands. "You didn't read the fine print," I said mercilessly. "That clause links this debt to everything you own. It means that this loan isn't just secured by my house anymore. It's secured by yours, and your business accounts, and that brand new Porsche sitting in my driveway." "No," he whispered, shaking his head. "No, you can't do that. That's my car. That's my house." "Technically," I corrected him, "since the loan is in default as of today, those assets belong to Red Oak Ventures. They belong to me." Michael stood up, knocking his chair over. "You're crazy. You're my father. You're going to take my house over a few missed payments?" "It's not about the payments, Michael. It's about the theft," I said, remaining seated. "I let you dig this hole for 3 months. I watched you buy that car. I watched you renovate your pool. I knew that every dollar you spent was a dollar you couldn't pay back. I waited for you to become insolvent." He looked at me with pure hatred now. The loving son act was gone. "You set me up," he hissed. "You knew. You knew the whole time, and you let me walk into a trap." "I didn't force you to steal," I replied calmly. "I didn't force you to forge my signature. I just ensured that when the bill came due, you would be the one paying it." He paced the room like a caged animal. He was looking for a way out. I could see the gears turning in his head. He was thinking about fighting this in court. He was thinking about denying everything. "I'll sue you," he threatened, pointing a shaking finger at me. "I'll get a lawyer. I'll say you tricked me. No judge will let a father evict his own son." I picked up the phone on my desk. "I was hoping you wouldn't say that." "Who are you calling?" he asked, his voice trembling again. "The district attorney," I lied smoothly. "Because if we are going to court, we might as well do it properly. Civil court is for debts. Criminal court is for forgery and fraud. You want to fight? Fine. But let's see how you fight from a cell." I held the phone receiver in my hand. His eyes went wide, The reality of his situation finally crashed down on him. He had zero leverage. "Put the phone down," Michael screamed. He lunged toward the desk, but stopped short. He saw the look in my eyes. It was a look he had never seen before. It wasn't anger. It was indifference. He realized in that second that I wasn't bluffing. I would send him to prison without blinking. His legs gave out. He sank to the floor, right there on the Persian rug. The arrogant businessman, the man who was going to modernize my home, was gone. In his place was a terrified child. "Dad, please," he sobbed, tears streaming down his face. "You can't do this. I'm your son. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I'll do anything." I slowly placed the receiver back on the cradle. The click sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. "You aren't my son," I said, my voice ice cold. "A son wouldn't steal his father's security. A son wouldn't plot to put me in a nursing home so he could cash out. You are a thief. And right now, you are simply a liability." "I'll pay you back," he begged, clutching the edge of the desk. "I'll work. I'll sell the car. Just don't call the police." "It's too late for negotiations," I said, standing up and walking around the desk to tower over him. "Here is the deal. There are two options on the table. Option A, I hand this file to the prosecutor. You go to prison for fraud, forgery, and elder abuse. You'll get 10 years minimum." He shook his head violently, snot running down his nose. "No, please, no." "Option B," I continued, relentless. "You sign over the deed to your house and the title to that Porsche to Red Oak Ventures immediately. You vacate your property within 24 hours. You leave with nothing but the clothes on your back. You avoid prison, but you start over from zero. Those are the terms." The door behind him creaked open. Jessica stood there, holding a glass of wine, looking horrified. She saw her rich boyfriend on his knees, crying like a baby. "Michael?" she whispered. "What's going on?" He didn't even look at her. He was too broken. He looked up at me, defeated. "I'll sign," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I'll sign everything." "Good," I said, sliding a pen across the desk toward him. "Start writing. And Michael, tell your girlfriend the dinner is over. You're not staying for dessert." The eviction happened exactly 24 hours later. I didn't hire a sheriff. I hired a moving crew. Michael left his dream home with 3 cardboard boxes and a suit bag. Jessica didn't even help him pack. She broke up with him in the driveway the moment she realized the Porsche was being repossessed by my company. Watching him walk away down the street, waiting for an Uber because he no longer had a car, I didn't feel joy. I felt a heavy, quiet relief. The leech had been removed. I didn't keep his house, and I didn't keep the money from the Porsche. I sold everything within a month. The market was hot, and I got a great price. But I didn't add a single cent to my bank account. I took the entire proceeds, nearly $500,000 of equity that Michael thought was his, and I started a non-profit foundation, the Moretti Fund. Its sole purpose is to provide free legal aid to elderly people who have been victims of financial fraud by their own family members. It's poetic justice. Michael's greed is now paying to save other fathers from sons just like him. As for Michael, I heard from a cousin that he's living in a cheap motel on the outskirts of the city, working double shifts at a warehouse. He called me once, about 6 months ago. I didn't answer. I simply blocked the number. I still live in my house on Oak Lane. It's quiet now. My assets are secure, my will has been rewritten, and for the first time in years, I sleep soundly. I taught my son the most valuable lesson of his life. You can steal money, but you can't steal consequences. So, I have to ask you, did I do the right thing? Was I too harsh on my own flesh and blood, or did he get exactly what he deserved? What would you have done if you found out your child stole your home? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of justice, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I have plenty more stories from my past that I'm ready to share. The end. Thank you for listening.